Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. JACALYN. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. JACALYN at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. You are watching or listening to USA Global TV and Radio. Our show today is The Listening Mentor, and I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, the President, Founder, and Chief Listening Officer here at our network. Each week, along with my co-host, HEWARD, we look at various topics related to listening skills, communication skills, relationship issues, anything that might be causing you stress or anxiety in your life that we can help you with, focused around, and our core area is listening skills. So without further ado, let's welcome the Harley Street stress expert joining us from London. Caroline, welcome.
Hello.
Hello, nice to see you. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm feeling good. We're having a laugh in the UK or crying. It depends how you look at it. and it feels good.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know our expert correspondents from the UK predicted this would happen a while back, so it was interesting to see what is going on. Of course, we have our own chaos here in the United States, so I guess every country has something that they're dealing with. And of course, if we can only get the politicians and the leaders to actually listen better, we might not have these challenges. But that's for another day, another time. So our topic today is the difference between healthy and unhealthy love. Many of us may be in relationships that we think are truly healthy because we've been programmed or conditioned to believe that this is what healthy love looks like. And then we find out on the other side, maybe years later, what the heck was I doing? That was a completely abusive and dysfunctional relationship. So, Caroline, before we get really drilling down into our topic, tell us about the work that you do as the Harley Street stress expert, and also about your Talking Heads platform.
I help people literally bust their stress by identifying the root cause of their fundamental symptoms, whether they be behavioral in relationships, physical or emotional, or whether they be emotional in terms of bereavement, grieving issues. So how I help them is literally to identify the initial root cause. It's a very easy and quick process, which literally busts their stress. It gives them an incredibly deep and restful restorative sleep. And it also allows the emotions to release that were locked from the initial trauma. I'm also a Talking Heads expert coach on the platform. And every week on a Tuesday at 5 o'clock, I deliver a 30 to 40 minute lesson and insight into the chakra system. About the first 6 episodes were looking at the chakra system and how it affects your life, the different symptoms. And now I'm looking at all sorts of aspects of trauma, stress, and how it affects your life. Please do tune in to the broadcast. And if you miss it, it's under the Talking Heads 2022 under my name. You'll find all of my reels under Talking Heads.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I appreciate that. All right, let's get right into it. First of all, is it really appropriate to use the words healthy or unhealthy when it comes to love?
That's a tasteful question in terms of semantics around how we describe our relationships, because all relationships have their ups and downs. It depends on how we feel in that relationship, whether it's working for us or whether it's not working for us. Sometimes we have those downs in a relationship to move through a growth period for ourselves and for the other person. So it is dependent on whether it's become a codependent relationship where you need the other person to exist and to experience life, or whether it's become a situation where it's become emotionally or physically or mentally abusive. So it is a semantic question, and it's important to be careful about how I answer that, so that we all have our good days and our bad days, and we all have those massive highs and those incredible challenges in relationships. All relationships have that. So it's important to recognize whether it's serving you or whether it's not serving you in a long-term effect.
Thank you, Caroline. And given the fact that relationships do go through ebbs and flows, just like people, is it possible that the same relationship is healthy one day and unhealthy the next? Or is it really a function of the health or unhealthiness of the people in the relationship?
What happens is we're a mirror, and everything that we're not handling in ourselves, so if there's some unexpressed emotional stress, it comes up in our relationships. And I'm not just talking about the intimate relationships, I'm talking about the family relationships, the siblings, I'm talking about those extended relationships, even our professional relationships with our colleagues and our personal relationships with friends. So we're always in a relational ship with everything and everyone around us. So it's important to understand that how others are responding to us is an indication of how we're experiencing or feeling about ourselves. So if we are complaining and suppressing that anger about things, we will find that we will attract people in our lives that will bring up that complaining, frustration, and that anger in them and reflect it back at us if we're not handling those unexpressed feelings and emotions. And so these are our relationships are our signals. It's our mirror to handle whatever there is. And if there's nothing that triggers you, then it's their stuff. And then you can decide, whether you take it on, which is unhealthy, or whether you organize and literally express what you need to express to handle the unexpressed emotion and feeling that you have suppressed.
Thank you, Caroline. Just to take that one step further, what about the people who really find joy in pushing other people's buttons? And so maybe the relationship is seemingly well. There aren't any major issues, except one day somebody wakes up and they're bored and they're not interested anymore. And now they start pushing your buttons, pulling your triggers so that you start to complain. What happens then? I think it turns unhealthy. What are your thoughts?
Yes, we have to be careful about those kinds of relationships because they can turn into narcissistic relationships, which is very unhealthy, where one person is in the controlling seat and knows your triggers and is in a deliberate state of pushing your buttons. Or, I had somebody actually describe to me once that it's like I knew where to put the knife in and twist it. And I thought that was an extraordinary expression of somebody feeling very uncomfortable about the topic and the subject matter that we were in. And I just smiled and said, it's not deliberate. I'm picking these things up because I care and I'm here to help you. So, it is a relationship that has to be in a state of awareness. And yes, certainly in families that can happen, and in relationships, intimate relationships, colleagues can do it too within your professional relationships. And it's important to have an understanding of how far you're willing to allow those triggers to affect you, and also similarly how important that relationship is to you in terms of, is it codependent? Do they need you to need them? And if that's the case, then that is unhealthy.
Well, you shared a lot of really valuable points there. Thank you. I think also that once you're out of an unhealthy relationship, you do work on yourself and you start to progress, you become very aware of these triggers. And the same people, they could even be family members, colleagues, they're still doing the same thing they were always doing, but yet you're not reacting the way that you used to react because you have that insight. And so you're not going to walk through that door down that path of unhealthy discord.
That's exactly right. It's about our response and reaction. It's always about our response and reaction. It's the other person can be in their drama, in their control, in their stuff that they're delivering, but how we respond affects how we feel in that relationship and that experience. And in England, we have an expression called water off a duck's back. So somebody is kind of pulling their strings and triggering you. It is about you being able to handle without response, without reaction, and without, sort of justification or explanation. And then when that conversation and those triggers are being shown to you, when you're not responding, it dissipates for you and for them. So they don't get the energy from that exchange of trying to trigger you, because it's always about how we respond and how we react in that situation as to how much we become triggered.
Excellent. So I like to focus on a healthy relationship. I think that's really important. And we obviously have relationships with family and friends and colleagues, even when we have a new acquaintance we meet. And just from the very start of a relationship, I think there are certain things that we can identify that are unhealthy. For example, let's say you just meet someone, maybe it's in a networking function, wherever it might be, and the person just continuously talks about themselves and talks about their business. They're just nonstop talking about themselves. You could attribute that to nerves. Maybe they're nervous being at an event, or you could also think to yourself that maybe the person has something going on in their life and give them grace. But you have to think to yourself, is this someone that I actually want to spend more time with if this is the way they are on a regular basis? We don't know if it's a one-off or how they are. But so what are some key behaviors that you've identified or that have been shared with you by your clients about things people do when they first meet that are really unhealthy?
It is dependent on the situation in terms of where you've met them. So if it is a networking event, there are many people that don't like networking, especially because they're feeling that they have to perform. And so that can come from a nervousness that they sort of get everything out that they need to say to you about what they do and how grand and how great they are and what results they can give you. And I've certainly had those experiences in the past in networking. And I'm actually qualified as a teacher to teach people how to network gracefully and effectively. And one of the things that one of the hot tips I would share is that it's always better to say to the other person, tell me about you. How did you get this invitation? What's your background? What do you help people with? So ask about them first, so that then you're then in control of the situation and the conversation. And then you can interject with what works, what's healthy in terms of their conversation, and how you can drip your experience and your information in that dialogue. And frequently people, sort of tell me that they're in property, for instance, or they're in very stressful type work. So I do like to hear what the other person has to say. If they're going on and on and on, then it's important to give them a bit of a signal, by interjecting and sharing conversation. And I experience that a lot in terms of people when I find out, sort of that they don't do networking very often, or they don't feel comfortable. It's not their space, and they're much more comfortable in the one-to-one situation.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And also, again, with networking, that's sort of a different category. I also like to ask someone at a networking event, what do you hope to accomplish today? You know, what brought you here today? Do you have certain people in mind you want to connect with? Maybe I can help make an introduction.
Yeah, and when you go in like that, that's beautiful, that's very helpful. You're coming across as very open and genuine. And, you're not littering them with your card. You're saying, how can I be of service to you? Tell me more about you. And I feel that that's a much more graceful way to be, certainly in a networking event, because many people, especially in our current times, are nervous of being in groups, or sort of then it's overwhelming because they've not been in big groups previously, for a long time because of our change times. So it's important to be understanding, and some people are maybe hogging the table where the food is or the drinks are because they're uncomfortable. I certainly have seen some people hogging their phone when they're sort of in this big situation. So it's important to be inclusive when it's in a personal situation. Certainly in our current times, a lot of people aren't in that activity, that social environment as often. So sometimes it can be almost like they're sort of having to blur it all out, that they just want to get everything out because they've not been in those social experiences for a long time, and it feels different for them, and they'll almost like sort of, we call it vomiting everything onto you because it's the first time they've been, together with a group of people or with somebody that's actually there physically.
I want to turn to now a one-on-one relationship, two people who are partners or they're in some kind of relationship, whether they're living together or some kind of commitment. And when you think about healthy or unhealthy, I'm going to give two different scenarios, and then maybe there's no right or wrong, healthy or unhealthy for either one of them, but I just love to have you consider. One is where the two people do everything together. They just cannot get enough of one another. They work out together, they walk together, they shop together. They really are just the two of them together all the time. And in the other scenario, the two people spend their time with their friends separately. So each partner has their own set of friends, and after work, they go out for drinks or they go to bowling or whatever it is. Then on the weekends, they have a girls' trip, they have a guys' trip. And so they don't spend really very much time together. Are either one of these healthy or unhealthy, or does it depend on the situation?
They're both healthy in their own right if both parties are happy with how that is working for them. It's not healthy when one person is doing all the going out and the other person is staying at home waiting for them to come back. That's very unhealthy, unless the person doesn't mind. So it is individual. It is important to be, honouring of the people within that relationship and what works for them. Sometimes it's really wonderful to be together, and sometimes it's good to have those outside friendships and interests so that when you come together, you've got something to talk about. And I've certainly known couples that have both of those types of relationships, and they're both healthy in their own right if it works for both parties. That's the important consideration in answering this question, that it has to feel right for both parties. Otherwise, then it will become unhealthy.
Thank you. And let's look at another behavior, because this is something that I've heard a lot about. Many years ago, decades ago, I had an issue with this, is that one person is very open with their phone and the other person is not. One person leaves their phone out, they give you the passcode to get into the phone, and the other person is very secretive with the phone. And when you ask, hey, can I take a look at your phone? What's wrong with you? I need my privacy. And it's sort of, the two people are on opposite sides. Is one healthy or unhealthy?
Wow, that's debatable, isn't it? Because it depends on what's going on with the other person. That's a really tricky experience to handle because, like myself, for instance, my phone has all my contacts for my clients and text messages, and also I download my emails on my phone as well. So, you know, there's a lot of sensitive and confidential information. So it wouldn't be appropriate for somebody to be looking into my phone because of the sensitivity of the type of work that I do. And so in that instance, if it's a work situation, then there has to be some understanding about confidentiality and sensitivity of and privacy of the work that you're doing. If the person is not in a sensitive role in terms of their work and occupation, then and they're, you know, sort of maybe they're, I don't know, I can't think of professions that aren't sensitive. You know, what if they're not using, like, so their personal phone is their personal phone, then I would question, you know, well, what are you hiding? And, you know, why is it that you're not being open with your communication? And why is it that I can't pick it up? But it is a very sensitive issue, this phone, because I know some people keep it locked. And they've said that their phone is safe, and you know, they do lots of activities outside of their professional work and relationships that could deem to be inappropriate if they're in a relationship.
Thank you so much for those comments. And, you know, something I just want to talk about a little bit further when it comes to the phone, or it can come to mail, MAIL, is everyone entitled to some level of privacy, or once you get into a relationship, there is no more privacy?
I do believe that it's important to have some level of privacy because everybody's going through their own stuff. And at the same time, you know, I'm going to say this because it's important to say, there are a lot of people that are in extra relationships when they're in a relationship, and that's why they're keeping their phone private. And so that's not, I don't approve of that because it is inappropriate if you're in a relationship. And so it is important to have, you know, then we're looking at not the phone, but we're actually looking at the trust issues within the relationship. And that's an important aspect to consider in terms of, is everything up for grabs? Because one person might be going through a crisis personally, which has nothing to do with the relationship. It might be a bereavement that they're handling. That's nothing to do with the relationship. And so they might be seeking help outside of the relationship and not feeling comfortable to share it. Certainly, you know, I'm studying a course at the moment which is on self-harm and suicide, and it's a very, very deep course. And you know, I'm looking at some videos and content where young people are actually keeping their self-harm confidential and private. And so this is certainly something that's going on in the world today with our very young people and young adults. And so it's important to understand why there is a need for a level of privacy, and to be compassionate and to move into a level of trust, because this all boils down to, do I trust this person?
Trust is a big word, isn't it? And that's where I think relationships go from healthy to unhealthy, because once someone becomes suspicious of their partner, many times they'll start changing their behavior and become like a private detective. And instead of actually asking the person up front, they start doing their own investigative work, and it just starts to go out of kilter. So my question for you is, when a relationship starts down the unhealthy path, is there a time when we can say, okay, I see what's going on and we need to get help, I need to get help, or I need to do something differently? Is there a time? And if so, any idea when it might be?
Yes, when it's stopped working, you know, when there's no service between each other for the relationship. and it's not wrong, it's not right, it just simply is. You know, when things stop working, it can be a mentor as well, you know, it can be a colleague, or a friendship. When things just become unhealthy and they stop working, that's the point. It's about, are you getting anything out of it in terms of, is it nourishing you? Because if it stops nourishing you, and then there's a time for things to end. You know, the Tibetan monks, they actually have a principle that they work by, that nothing is permanent, that they live in this experience of the world is impermanent. And so when we expect something to be permanent there all the time, then we grow an attachment. And it's not healthy to have attachments to things, relationships, and people. And so it is important to understand when a relationship, friendship, or an intimate relationship has come to its end, and it's time to move on, because you've had everything that you need and that the other person needs from that relationship.
Thank you, Caroline. And when we get to this point that it is unhealthy and we decide we're going to leave, is it healthy or unhealthy to send a text message, maybe leave a Post-it note on the refrigerator, or maybe just go totally dark?
That's really funny, because to be done by text, you know, is it's I know it does, and we live in that world, don't we, now, of that written communication being so immediate. You know, in the Victorian times, they didn't have, you know, they had pigeons that, you know, they would have to write and send a pigeon. So it would be much more difficult to have this very quick response of dumping somebody or a relationship by text. I don't feel that is a great idea. I feel that that's a cold way to go. And at the same time, some people do that because of something that's going on for them. If they go dark, you know, or ghosting you, literally not communicating with you, when they stop communicating, there may be something going on in their world that is nothing to do with you, that they're having to handle or to cope with. And it's important to have that, you know, openness in terms of the communication, because it might just be that they're very busy handling a crisis and then they come back when the crisis is over. Or it could be that they don't have the words to be truthful, that it's over. And so to go quiet, to go silent, is their way of handling a situation that's difficult. And so it's important to have a little bit more understanding of the person and of the situation. And nobody likes to be, you know, sort of, I've learnt this term recently, ghosted, where somebody just literally stops communicating and stops speaking, doesn't respond to any messages. And, you know, you don't know what's happening on their side. And so compassion is the first place. And to understand, just to check in with yourself, is there anything there that you're responding to? Because if there's a reaction, a response, there might be something there that you're picking up, that you know something's very wrong and that it's ended. Or it could be that you're not picking up anything. You're thinking, oh, you know, well, they're just not responding anymore. They've gone silent. I wonder what's going on. You know, and so that's water off a duck's back, not reacting and thinking, you know, well, there's something going on in their world.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Now, what about on the other side, when the relationship looks very unhealthy to an outsider, and yet your friends, whichever party is your friend, the one who seemingly is the one who's getting betrayed or who's getting belittled or who's constantly complaining and hurt, will not open their eyes to do anything and just consistently is explaining away. Oh, he doesn't feel well. He had to work late. Oh, he this, he that. He's under a lot of pressure. And yet you see something else. Do you get involved with the unhealthy relationship and start to give your opinions?
That's very tricky, because when you do that, it then can literally cause you a nightmare, because you're then making that person confront what maybe on some level they actually see themselves, especially if they are constantly justifying and explaining. If somebody's justifying and explaining away somebody's behavior, it's because there's something that on some level, some deep level, that they do feel is wrong, but they're not willing to look at it. My invitation there is to be open without treading on their toes, to actually say, well, kind of look at this, it doesn't look right to me, I'm a friend, I really care about you, go in from a compassionate place of the insights, rather than just condemning it, because as soon as you condemn something that they're in, they will immediately go into the justification and the defense strategy. So it's important to get them to hear that you care, you love them, and you're worried about them, sort of check in that they are okay, because they just might not be okay.
Thanks so much for that. I think also, as an extension of that, at least I've seen this happen numerous times, where the person is complaining about how unhealthy the relationship is and how the partner's not there, et cetera, et cetera. And you continue to get together with the person, and you're sort of that shoulder for them to cry on. And they're going to break up. They're definitely leaving. And then all of a sudden they go dark because they decided to try to make it work. And now they don't know what to tell you.
Oh yeah, I've known of relationships like that. I've had people come to me with those kind of relationships, and it's something that they have to work through themselves. You can never work through why, because they are in their own healing and challenge process. So when they're ready to come back and surface, then be there. And I would imagine that from their perspective, if they've decided to give it another go and gone quiet with you, it's because they feel a little embarrassed that they've shared all the bad stuff, and then they decided to have another go again. But we're in relationships to handle things, and when we're feeling safe and comfortable that relationship has come to an end, then we're safe to do that. And if the person keeps going back, it's because they don't feel that it's safe to end it. And so they're having these out spills of sharing when it's not good, and then going back into it when it perpetuates to be better. And then they feel silly, embarrassed, oh gosh, I don't want them to sort of burden them with, oh, I've gone back to him or her. So it's important to allow space. That's my give here, to allow space for that person to work through whatever it is they need to work through.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've also seen, as an extension of that, when the other person says to your friends, who did you tell about this? Oh, I told Susie, I told Caroline. Oh, how can I ever be in front of them again? You're going to have to make a decision. Either you're going to be with me and you're going to stop talking to them. And then they choose their partner because they really believe that this is the healthiest thing. And of course, ultimately it doesn't work out usually. I mean, not every time. And then they'll come crawling back to you at some point in the future. And then it's your opportunity to say, hey, I didn't think that you and I had a really healthy relationship. So I wish you the best. And I've actually moved on, or, hey, I'm still here for you.
Yeah, it's it's a difficult and a tricky situation to be in. And there has to be, if it's I kind of consider that it's relationships are for a reason, a season or a lifetime. And if they stop working because of an external relationship that they're in, it's important to allow them to honor what they feel is right for them. And if you're still open for them to come back, then great. And if you've moved on, then that's okay too. It's like sort of, this is a space of non-judgment, and it's not easy, because when we get into personal relationships, we get into that emotional response, and we get into that unhealthy response of shame, of, you know, you did this to me, the shame and blame game, and guilt tripping the other person. We're human, you know, these are the things that can happen. But it's, does it serve us? Is that experience and is that response serving the person by being in that way? And usually it's not serving us. And if we're getting something from it, if it's serving us in some way and we're getting some experience, we're getting some energy from it, then we will be in that space until we stop getting something from it. So my question would be, what would be the investment of being in that relationship on both sides?
Relationships take a lot of work, a lot of investment. So I think as we look at healthy or unhealthy relationships, where do we want to put our time and our energy? And the relationship can become unhealthy for any number of reasons, but maybe that's also the wake up sign. Maybe that's the door opening for us to walk through and choose a different path and say, hey, I was with you for a season, for a reason, and now I'm moving on.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong in moving on, because we're consistently changing and evolving and growing in terms of our experiences, what we do, what we share. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. I think many of us have changed. I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I'm evolving as the years go by, as we all are. You know, I'm consistently in some kind of study or training, which has a natural and positive effect on me being evolved. And it also makes me look inward. And so relationships, I would say it's the first relationship is self. That's the very first relationship that we have to look at. And if there's something that's not working, to look inward about what we're not comfortable with, what we're not handling. And then when we resolve our internal, our personal, our inward relationship with self, then our external relationships will reflect that work that we have done on our inward relationship. And this is the first place that I look. Although it's difficult at times, this is the very first place, because when somebody comes to me and they're complaining about this person and that person and the other person, I look at, well, what is it in them? What does it remind me of? Remind them of that's not working for them? What is it that they are unresolved in their past relationships, because it keeps cropping up in their current relationships? So I always look down deep. You know, I have a mentor and a very dear friend that actually turns around and he says, Caroline's deep. She's really deep. Because I always go deep into the what is creating this situation and experience that somebody's experiencing.
As we come to the end of our show, I just want to thank you for all of your comments. And also, I want to just share that after we come out of a relationship, it might be good to be alone. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. You have to find your own space. You have to come back to yourself and who you are in that space after the relationship. It's very important to take alone space to rediscover who you're being and who you want to be, and what things that you like and dislike, because you may have changed because of that relationship. And so I feel it's integral to have space to yourself to work out who you are being and who you want to be to yourself as well as to others.
Wow, I think these are just powerful comments and experience and your expertise that you shared today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. No matter what I throw at you, you've got a great answer.
Well, the relationships are very powerful. This is my work. You know, this is what I do. Our relationship with ourselves and others. It's a very deep and powerful topic. And, you know, I was looking forward to tonight because I thought, oh, you know, this is going to be fun, because it's my comfort place, because I've done so much work over the years on myself. You know, and what I would like to share as a final share is If ever I'm having a challenge with something, a situation, a circumstance, an event, I always look at myself to look at what's going on for me, why I'm responding that way. And the other thing about that is that if it's a really difficult situation that I'm experiencing, I always, and without exception, turn to study. And I go and study and do new qualifications and new training in an area that I've landed up in a challenge, so that I can help myself through that experience and overcome it in the most productive way. And also so I can be that better experienced coach and mentor to my clients. And that is my give. My challenges become my growth.
Wow. Thank you so much, Caroline. While I have you on Spotlight, can you please also give your contact information and also let people know when they can watch your next Talking Heads?
Yes, my contact information is if you email me on NoMoreStress@live.co.uk and book in a free consultation either on Zoom, Skype, and let me know where you are, and also what the problems are. And then we can schedule a time that works for you. My Talking Heads, you'll be able to reach me on my Talking Heads Live on a Tuesday. That's every Tuesday at 5 p.m. And it's only between a 30 to 40-minute show. And it's packed with these types of things that I've shared with you tonight. It is my gift, and it is my pleasure, and it is my challenge to help all the people that I can through Talking Heads, as well as through these broadcasts.
Fabulous. As always, thank you so much. I really enjoy sharing this space with you and the value that we bring people when it comes to listening, communication, and relationships. So please do reach out to Caroline. We have her email address right here. And then she also has a special offer for the free Zoom session to bust your stress. Why hold on to it? Get rid of it. Ditch that stress and go out there and enjoy your life.
Absolutely. We don't need it. That's just an indicator that we've got something to handle.
Yeah, you're worrying about losing weight, people. Lose that stress. You're going to feel so much lighter. So do join us again next week. We will be back with another exciting topic. And our next show is coming up, a show that's normally the hour later, but has moved into this new time slot, presenting pet psychic Amina. And today's topic is what we need to know about feeding wildlife. We think we're doing a real service when we start feeding the squirrels and the bears, and they come to our home because they're looking for more food, and now we're angry. Why would we be angry? We invited them. We opened the door. So stay tuned for more information on that. Caroline, enjoy the rest of your evening and your weekend. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See
Bye.
you later. Bye.